What if I told you that you have been growing your plants completely wrong your entire life? And what if the secret to getting 300% more growth costs literally $2? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are exposing a massive secret that the multi-billion-dollar agribusiness industry is desperately trying to keep hidden from everyday gardeners like you. By the end of this video, you are going to learn how a tiny, almost ridiculously cheap container modification can force your plants to explode in size, yield, and overall health. But here is the hook. The pots you are currently buying from the store are actually designed to make your plants fail over time. Sounds crazy, right? I want you to drop a comment right now. Do you think big gardening brands actually want your plants to thrive forever, or do they want you coming back to buy replacements? Let me know below, and let us dive into the truth. To truly understand why this $2 container is a total game changer, we have to look back at how plants have been commercially grown for the last 50 years. The standard black plastic nursery pot was invented for one primary reason: shipping convenience. It was never designed for the actual biological health of the plant. In nature, a plant spreads its roots wide and deep, constantly searching for pockets of air and water. But when commercial agriculture boomed, they needed a way to pack thousands of plants onto trucks. The solid plastic pot was cheap, stackable, and held soil together during transport. However, this created a hidden epidemic in the gardening world. We accepted these solid plastic walls as the normal, healthy way to contain a plant. We were taught that as long as there is a hole at the bottom for water, the plant is perfectly fine. But science tells a completely different story, introducing us to a concept that will completely revolutionize your garden today. Let us start by looking at the devastating problem with standard pots. Have you ever bought a beautiful, healthy-looking plant from a nursery, brought it home, and watched it slowly stop growing? You probably thought it was your fault. But let us look at a vivid example. Imagine taking that plant and carefully pulling it out of its plastic nursery pot. What do you actually see? You see a thick, tangled mess of roots wrapping endlessly around the inside of the plastic in a desperate circle. This condition is called becoming root-bound. The roots have nowhere to go, so they just strangle themselves. This standard plastic pot is the first major trap set by traditional agriculture. They sell you a plant that is essentially on a ticking clock. Because those roots are choking, the plant cannot absorb water or nutrients effectively. You water it, but the water just runs down the sides. You feed it expensive fertilizers, but the plant starves. It is a brilliant business model for them. When your plant eventually dies, you just go buy another one. Now, let us introduce the biological miracle that changes everything. It is a concept called air pruning. Imagine a thick tree root growing outward in a forest. Eventually, it reaches the edge of a cliff or a pocket of dry air in the soil. What happens? The tip of that root naturally dries out and stops growing in that direction. But it does not die. Instead, that single root branches out into dozens of tiny, fibrous feeder roots further back. This is exactly what we want to replicate. When a root hits air, it trims itself and multiplies. In a standard solid pot, the root hits the plastic wall, bends, and keeps growing in a long, useless circle. It never branches out. By exposing the edges of our soil to the open air, we force the plant to build a massive, dense, highly efficient root system. More feeder roots mean more pathways for food and water to enter the plant. This simple biological trick is the absolute foundation of unlocking that incredible 300% growth. So, what exactly is this magical $2 container? It is actually shockingly simple. We are talking about taking a cheap, reusable grocery bag, a woven fabric sack, or even a basic plastic dollar store bucket, and dramatically modifying it. For a vivid illustration, picture taking a standard drill or a hot soldering iron to a cheap plastic bucket and putting hundreds of small holes all around the sides, not just the bottom. or simply buying a cheap fabric aeration bag online. By creating a container whose walls breathe, you are building an air pruning machine. The moment the roots reach the edge of this new container, they poke through the fabric or the holes, hit the dry air, and instantly prune themselves. They stop circling. They branch backward. For roughly $2, you have just created a highly advanced hydroponic-style environment using regular soil. It is so simple that most people completely overlook it, assuming expensive equipment is required for massive yields. Let us talk about why agribusiness hates this simple solution. It all comes down to the profit loop. The gardening industry makes billions of dollars selling you liquid fertilizers, specialized soil amendments, and chemical root boosters. Let us bust a major myth right now. You do not always need more fertilizer to fix a struggling plant. Often, the plant just doesn't have the root capacity to eat what is already there. Picture walking down the aisles of a big box home improvement store. You see endless rows of brightly colored bottles promising miracle growth. But if you use our $2 breathable container, your plant develops a root system so dense and efficient that it can extract maximum nutrition from basic, cheap compost. The big corporations lose money when you stop buying their chemical boosters. They want your plants to have weak, circling roots because weak plants need constant chemical intervention to survive. By fixing the root architecture, you cut them out of the equation completely. Let us dive into the science of oxygen in the root zone. Most people think plants only breathe through their leaves. That is a critical misunderstanding. Plant roots desperately need oxygen to perform cellular respiration. Without oxygen, roots cannot convert the sugars made during photosynthesis into usable energy. Imagine trying to run a marathon while holding your breath. That is exactly what your plant is doing in a dense, overwatered plastic pot. When you switch to a breathable container, oxygen freely diffuses directly through the sides and into the soil. The roots can finally take a deep breath of fresh air. This constant supply of oxygen supercharges the plant's metabolism. It can process nutrients faster, grow stronger stems, and fight off diseases much more effectively. The difference is like night and day. Once you give the underground half of your plant the oxygen it craves, the above-ground half has no choice but to explode with vigorous, unstoppable growth. Now, we need to address that massive claim of 300% growth. How is that actually measured? We are not just talking about a plant getting 3 times taller. We are talking about total biomass, which includes thicker stems, more leaves, larger flowers, and heavier fruits. For a very vivid example, imagine planting 2 identical tomato seedlings on the exact same day. Put one in a standard plastic pot and one in our $2 breathable container. After 30 days, pull them both up. The plastic pot plant might have a single thin stem and a few tomatoes, but the breathable container plant will be a massive bush. The root mass alone will be 3 times larger, looking like a dense white sponge. Because the root engine is so much bigger, it supports a much heavier, bushier plant above ground. The 300% increase is a compounding effect. More roots lead to more leaves, which capture more sunlight, which builds even more roots. It is a beautiful, unstoppable cycle. Another incredible benefit of this container is perfect water drainage. Let us shatter a very common myth about houseplants and gardens right now. People think overwatering means giving a plant too much water at one time. That is false. Overwatering actually means the soil stays wet for too long, depriving the roots of oxygen. Think about a soggy, smelly dish sponge that has been left in the sink for a week. That is what the bottom of a plastic pot looks like. But with our breathable container, it is impossible to overwater. You can pour a gallon of water over it, and whatever the soil cannot hold instantly drains out the sides and bottom. The soil remains damp, like a freshly wrung-out cloth, but never soggy. This completely eliminates the risk of root rot, which is the #1 killer of potted plants worldwide. You no longer have to guess if your plant needs water. You just water it heavily, and the container perfectly regulates the moisture level for you. We also have to talk about the hidden world of beneficial microbes. Your soil is not just dirt, it is supposed to be a living ecosystem. Beneficial bacteria and mycorrhizal fungi live on plant roots, helping them digest complex minerals. But just like the plant roots, these good microbes need a massive amount of oxygen to survive. In a suffocating plastic pot, bad anaerobic bacteria take over, causing bad smells and disease. But in our breathable container, the good microbes thrive. Picture a microscopic, bustling city underneath the soil, where millions of tiny workers are constantly breaking down organic matter and hand-delivering it to your plant roots. By providing a highly oxygenated environment, you are building the perfect home for this microbial army. They will work around the clock to feed your plant, drastically reducing your need for added fertilizers. You are letting nature do the hard work for you, just by changing the walls of the pot. Let us get practical and talk about how to actually make this $2 container step by step. If you are using a cheap plastic bucket from a hardware store, do not just drill a few holes in the bottom. You need to turn the sides into Swiss cheese. For a great illustration, imagine taking a cheap soldering iron. Step outside to avoid fumes and simply melt rows of holes all around the sides of the bucket. Melting is often better than drilling because it does not crack the cheap plastic. You want holes every 2 inches, all the way from the top to the bottom. If you prefer the fabric route, you can buy cheap landscaping fabric or reusable grocery bags made of non-woven material. Simply fill the bag with soil and roll the top edges down to make it sturdy. Either method achieves the exact same scientific result. You are removing the solid barrier and inviting the air inside. It takes about 5 minutes of light manual labor to create a growing environment that rivals professional setups. Choosing the right growing medium is crucial for this specific setup. Because the container breathes so well, you do not want to use heavy, dense, clay-based dirt from your yard. It will dry into a solid brick. Instead, you want a light, fluffy mix. Let us bust the myth that expensive soil is always better. You can make an incredible mix yourself. Picture mixing a giant bowl of fluffy cake batter. You want to combine equal parts of coco coir or peat moss to hold moisture and perlite to provide structure. The perlite looks like little white styrofoam balls, and it keeps the soil from compacting. Then, mix in a few handfuls of cheap worm castings or compost for food. This specific fluffy mixture pairs perfectly with the breathable walls. It acts like a giant sponge, holding just enough water while allowing maximum airflow. This combination of the airy container and the fluffy soil is the absolute golden ticket to achieving that explosive 300% growth rate. Let us talk more about how this system maximizes nutrient uptake. In a normal pot, a plant roots will circle the outside edge, leaving a massive dead zone of untouched soil right in the middle of the pot. You are basically wasting half the dirt you bought. But with air pruning, the roots branch inward, filling every single square inch of the container with thousands of tiny, hungry mouths. Imagine taking your plant to an all-you-can-eat buffet. In a plastic pot, its hands are tied, and it can only reach the food right on the edge of the table. But in our breathable container, it has full access to the entire feast. Because the roots permeate the entire volume of soil, they access every single drop of water and speck of nutrition available. This means you actually have to fertilize less often, but the plant grows much faster. It is supreme efficiency. Every cent you spend on compost actually goes directly into the plant, rather than washing out the bottom. Temperature regulation is another massive hidden benefit of this $2 container. During the peak of summer, black plastic pots sitting in the sun become absolute ovens. They bake the roots, causing extreme stress to the plant. It is exactly like sitting inside a dark, hot car in July with the windows rolled up. The plant stops growing just to survive the heat. However, a breathable container uses a natural process called evaporative cooling. As moisture slowly evaporates through the tiny holes or the fabric sides, it pulls heat away from the root zone. Picture sitting under a large shade tree with a cool, gentle breeze blowing. That is what your plant roots feel in this container. Even on the hottest days, the soil temperature remains perfectly stable and cool. Because the plant is not wasting energy fighting heat stress, it redirects all that energy into growing bigger leaves and producing more fruit. It is built in climate control for pennies. You might be wondering if this only works for outdoor vegetable gardens. The answer is absolutely not. This is a massive secret for indoor houseplant enthusiasts as well. Have you ever struggled with a fiddly indoor tropical plant that always seems to get yellow leaves? It is almost always a root issue caused by decorative ceramic or plastic pots. By adapting this method indoors, you change the game. Imagine having a massive monstera plant taking over the corner of your living room, pushing out huge, deeply split leaves every single week. You can use smaller fabric pots or modified plastic liners and simply place them inside your pretty decorative baskets to catch drips. Your indoor plants will develop the same massive, air-pruned root systems as outdoor plants. They will be vastly more resistant to common indoor pests, like fungus gnats, because the top layer of soil dries out faster and the roots stay incredibly healthy. It brings professional greenhouse science right into your living room. For those of you growing heavy-feeding vegetables outdoors, this method is basically mandatory. Plants like tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers require massive amounts of energy to produce heavy fruit. In standard pots, they quickly run out of space, become root-bound, and stop producing halfway through the summer. But with this breathable setup, the results are staggering. Picture yourself carrying a lightweight container that is literally overflowing with giant, vibrant red bell peppers. Because the root system never stops branching and renewing itself, the plant never receives the biological signal to stop growing. It thinks it is planted in the limitless ground. You can successfully grow massive, deep-rooted vegetables in incredibly small spaces, like an apartment balcony or a concrete patio. You are getting the yield of a massive raised garden bed out of a container that takes up just 1 square foot of space. It is the ultimate urban farming hack. We must also consider the environmental impact of making this switch. The traditional gardening industry relies on a continuous cycle of single-use plastics. Every spring, millions of people buy plants in cheap plastic nursery pots, which immediately crack, break, and get thrown away. Imagine a visual of a massive landfill, piled high with mountains of cracked, faded black plastic pots that will sit there for hundreds of years. By creating your own breathable containers from durable materials or reusable fabric bags, you are breaking this toxic cycle. Fabric pots can be washed and reused for many years. Heavy-duty modified buckets will last a decade. You are not just saving money and growing bigger plants. You are actively refusing to participate in a wasteful, disposable system that agribusiness relies on for profit. You take the power back into your own hands, creating a sustainable, long-lasting garden setup that respects both your wallet and the environment. Now, let us address the one real challenge with this system. It dries out faster. Because we have increased the airflow so dramatically, evaporation happens quicker. This is the trade-off for explosive growth. But do not worry, we can solve this easily without losing the benefits. Let us debunk the myth that you have to stand there with a hose every single day. For a vivid illustration, picture setting up a simple cotton string drip system before you leave for a summer vacation. You just place a large bucket of water next to your plant, drop one end of a thick cotton rope into the water, and bury the other end in your breathable container. The water naturally wicks through the rope, keeping the soil perfectly moist without ever suffocating the roots. Or you can easily set up cheap, automated drip emitters. By combining automated slow watering with maximum aeration, you create the absolute perfect storm for plant health. You get the airflow of a desert and the moisture of a rainforest. The absolute most satisfying part of this entire process is the harvest reveal. At the end of the growing season, when your annual plants have finished producing, it is time to empty the containers. This is where you truly see the magic you have created. When you dump out a standard plastic pot, you get a sad, brown, tangled mess of thick, choked roots. But imagine pulling up the root ball from your breathable $2 container. What you will see is breathtaking. The root mass will look like a perfect, fuzzy white brain. It will hold the shape of the container completely, yet there will not be a single root circling the outside. It will be a solid block of millions of microscopic feeder roots. It is visually stunning proof that the science of air pruning works exactly as promised. Seeing this massive, healthy root structure with your own eyes is the moment you will realize you can never go back to traditional plastic pots ever again. Another massive advantage that big agriculture hates is the long-term reusability of this system. They want you buying new gear every single season. But let us look at the lifespan of our cheap hack. If you use a modified heavy-duty plastic bucket, it will endure extreme sun, rain, and freezing winters. Picture yourself walking out to your shed in the early spring. You grab the bucket you used last year, simply wash it out with a garden hose, and it is ready to go again. It is in perfect condition. Even the cheap fabric bags, if shaken out and folded away in the winter, will easily last 4 to 5 growing seasons. You spend $2 once, and it pays you back with massive yields for half a decade. This incredible return on investment is exactly why commercial entities keep this quiet. It empowers the home gardener to produce commercial-level results on a budget that is almost entirely negligible. You are building lasting infrastructure for mere pennies. If you still doubt the power of this method, let me let you in on an industry secret. Commercial tree nurseries and high-end cannabis growers have actually known about this for years. They do not use standard solid pots. If you visit a massive professional tree farm, you will see them using highly engineered containers with textured walls and air holes. But here is the catch. Picture looking at a price tag on one of these branded smart pots at a specialty garden center. They will charge you $30, $40, or even $50 for a single specialized container. They take the exact same basic science of air pruning and package it into a premium luxury product. Our $2 bucket hack steals their proprietary science and gives it to you practically for free. You are achieving the exact same biological result, the exact same 300% growth explosion, without paying the absurd premium markup. You are essentially hacking the professional agriculture industry. Finally, let us talk about scaling this up. Once you see the results on one plant, you are going to want to transform your entire growing space. This system is incredibly modular. Imagine a whole row of these containers lining your driveway or patio, creating a lush, productive backyard farm. Because the pots are lightweight and breathable, you can move them around to chase the sun as the seasons change. Picture this entire row feeding a family of 4 with fresh tomatoes, cucumbers, and greens all summer long. You are no longer limited by the poor soil quality in your actual yard. You have created perfect, isolated growing environments that guarantee maximum yield. By investing maybe $20 or $30 total, you can build an entire fleet of these high-performance containers. It is the most cost-effective, scientifically sound way to secure your own food supply and create a breathtaking garden space, completely bypassing the traps of the modern gardening industry. So let us look at the incredible journey we have taken today. We started by uncovering the dark truth about standard plastic nursery pots and how they literally strangle your plants. Then we revealed the ultimate twist, that a simple $2 modified container can trigger air pruning, multiply your root mass, and result in a staggering 300% increase in growth. You learned that by simply letting the soil breathe, you eliminate root rot, invite beneficial microbes, and force your plants to become absolute giants. This is the exact knowledge that the agribusiness giants hoped you would never find out. By making this simple switch, you are taking control of your garden and your wallet. Thank you so much for watching and learning with me today. If this video opened your eyes to a new way of growing, please hit that subscribe button, give the video a big thumbs up, and share it with a friend who loves plants. Now, I have a question for you to answer in the comments. What is the first plant you are going to rescue from a plastic pot and upgrade to this breathable system? Drop your answers below, and I will see you in the next video.